Hi, welcome back to INTERGEO TV here from Frankfurt. And right now I'm delighted to be joined by Addison. He's the Executive Director of the World Geospatial Industry Council, WGIC. Hi, great to have you here.
Thanks
Again,
so much. It's great to be back.
after such a long time. Yeah, we met last year in Stuttgart.
Absolutely.
So Aaron, I followed your LinkedIn line and it really impressed me a lot because you're on the road a lot. Meeting governments, meeting cities, industries across regions. And what's driving you and the industry right now most in your WGIC role? What are people talking about, what they are caring about, what they are dealing with?
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great to be back with you again this year here at INTERGEO and see all the excitement. I think there are a number of things that are top of mind and priority for the geospatial companies within WGIC. Of course, technology is moving very rapidly. We see AI changing almost by the day, it seems like. But also people want to move from data to decision. In fact, we have a whole panel session here that's been very popular around how do I take data and turn it into decisions. So it's not so much whether or not I can collect the data. Everyone at this point can collect the data, but what do you do with the data? How is it in service of making some decision, making the world better? And that's true whether you want to work on infrastructure, if you're working on climate, if you're working with cities, if you're working with large metro areas that are looking at digital twin technologies. So it's really an exciting time, and there are really no limits to it because we're seeing it being used in such a wide variety of ways.
We will talk about these topics, and first of all, I just really scrolled a bit back what we were talking about last year, and we really addressed that geospatial talent gap. We were talking about young talents, careers. This year we tried to reinvent the Geo Campus, where we really invite young people and young talents like Rami Tamimi is running around and interviewing young people, and he has this new education school for surveyors and so on. So a lot is going on, and we really try to make it visible and attractive, that industry for students and careers. So if we just pick one success metric for dealing with that for the next years or for 2026. So what is it and who must lead to get new talents? Is it like the industry? Is it like venues? Is it or events? Is it like...
It's really all the above. I wish there was some magic button that we could push and fix the talent and the workforce challenges within the industry. But I think it's clear now that we need to start earlier in the education journey, maybe even elementary school, and help kids get excited about maps and be passionate about maps. And then I think it moves into helping them see themselves in that career. Otherwise, they will sit through a presentation and they will say, that's very interesting, but it can't be for me. They maybe feel like they're not smart enough, or they feel like that it's too complicated, or it's for somebody else. And so really part of our journey has to be helping them see themselves in our industry. And again, that's not just an educator challenge, but that's also a responsibility of the industry to help people see it as a viable career option for themselves moving forward. Because right now our industry grows at an annual rate of about 11 to 14%, and our education pipeline grows at a rate of about 2%. And so you don't have to be an economist to understand that those two things are not growing at the same rate. And so as the industry continues to outpace the talent, what will happen and what is happening right now is that talent becomes much more of a premium. And so that's not good for profits, that's not good for filling all those open positions. So we really have to work together to make sure that we're starting to meet those needs on a much longer trajectory than just what can we do today.
So dealing with the new tools or technologies like AI, GeoAI, I mean, everybody's talking about AI and collaboration and dealing with lots of data with AI. So do we also have to educate the new skills or jobs, and as an organization, how do we upskill people dealing with it?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think upskilling and reskilling is something that's very important as automation changes, AI is introduced into some of these platforms, it becomes very critical to have not only the expertise around the tools, but also bringing in domain expertise, bringing in ideas like critical thinking, because we get a wide variety of outputs from technologies like AI, and you may have heard of like hallucinations and things like that. You need someone who has that domain expertise to say, okay, is what I'm getting out of the AI what I expected to get out of the AI? You know, I put 4, 5, 10 or more data sets into the algorithm, but what I get out from the algorithm, I need somebody who knows what they're looking at to say, okay, that's correct, that's not correct, we need to, you know, go back and reinvestigate. And so that becomes a part of that education piece as well, as how do you look critically at the data, how do you understand what's coming out from all these platforms, and then again, because we want to use these things to make the world a better place, to improve supply chain, safety, health. We spoke earlier off camera about all the various natural hazards and things where AI and GeoAI are being used now, not only in a reactive mode or descriptive mode, we sometimes call it, but in a planning mode, a proactive mode. So we always map like, okay, here's what happened, here's where the fire was, here's where the flood was, but now we want to move that into a prescriptive or forward-looking platform with all these tools and technologies to say, okay, where are the areas that are going to flood, where are the areas that might burn, based on what we know from past experience and the current conditions.
Yeah, I think this is really important because one session in the conference is also about dealing with fake maps and shaky data. So how can we deal with that? Because we have to deal with ethics and data integrity. So users can really trust what they see because AI can really create any map.
Yeah, it can, and you know, we do. Maps are very interesting because it's one of those things where nobody ever looks at a map and just says that map's wrong, or that map possibly can't be correct. Right? We tend to believe a map when we see a map because, of course, if someone took the time and effort to create the map, it must be correct. You know, why would you create an incorrect map? But of course, we've all had personal experiences, perhaps even with our own smart devices, where we're navigating, and it leads us to a dead end, or it leads us to, you know, incorrect location. And there's sort of this internal strange feeling we have where we trusted the map, and the map let us down. And so I think, it's very important, not only for that, but imagine putting yourselves in the shoes of a mayor of a community. And if we're showing them maps, if we're looking at a bunch of geodata, and they're tasked with making the decision on evacuations, right? It's like, how did you make this map? And if you can't answer that question, then why should the decision maker believe you? Why should they pay attention to you, right? Because they're the ones that are going to be the responsible party, not the person who actually made the map. And so I think it's really important to work as closely as possible as we can with those communities to understand what their fears are, what their needs are, what their responsibilities are, so that we can, create outputs, create maps, and other types of outputs that are the best possible versions of what they can be for that, whatever that use case might be.
Aaron, we were also talking about digital twins last year in 2024. You said the tech is largely here.
Yep.
Resources, long-time care are the hurdles. And people need solutions, and policy needs settings that make urban digital twins sustainable and beyond the pilot phase. So how was it developing during the year? What do you think?
I think what I'm seeing is an elevated conversation around words like interoperability. So it would be great if we were all to follow the same standards, much in the same way it would be great if the entire world spoke the same language. But we don't. And the reality is we still need to communicate. Whether we're using the same language or not, we need ways that we can translate and communicate. And that's the business of interoperability. Interoperability recognizes that the world's a bit of a messy place at times, and yet there's still these systems that need to be able to interact in order to make a digital twin, for instance, possible. So how do I get all these systems to talk to each other in a meaningful way so they're sharing what needs to be shared, when it needs to be shared, so that you can take actions based on your digital twin. And so I think you'll see a lot more of that evolve over the coming years, because that's going to be the real sort of glue that brings all the various components of digital twin to reality.
Absolutely. So INTERGEO is really kind of an international event. It acts global, it thinks local, or it thinks global and acts global, don't know, it depends. Do you have practices from another region that Europe should look right now at the moment? And you have the worldwide view. We are sitting here in Germany, Europe, and what practices do we have to adopt, or where do you have to look at? Or
I think it's a great question, and you're right. I do get to see a lot of different examples, and one of the things that I've sort of grown into learning over the last couple of years in this role is that there is no one right way to do any of this, and what works in Australia may or may not work in Europe. It works in the Middle East, may or may not work in North America. But there is sort of this opportunity to take best practices. And oftentimes I compare it to reading a book. Don't throw the whole book away because there was one chapter you disagreed with. Take the 2 or 3 good ideas out of the book and then move on and do that, in a sustained way. And I look at that as I see the different approaches to geospatial and Earth observation around the world. Take the 2 or 3 good things that work for you, incorporate those into your workflow, and then move on to the next step. And don't try to mirror or don't try to replicate what somebody else is doing. And certainly there's no reason to hold one particular project over another to a gold standard of somehow, because they had a very unique set of circumstances whenever they designed that project. And just because it's working very well in their setting doesn't mean that you're going to be able to transplant it into your setting and have it work equally well. They have different technologies, different data sets, probably different demands on that, but they'll also have different aspects of the non-technical factors like talent, like decision making, like organizational structure. All of these things are going to be quite different depending on where you're at in the world. And that's true whether you're doing implementations or even, as we talked about earlier, I'm seeing that even in education. The educational model that's working in Australia is unheard of in North America, and vice versa. The one that's in North America simply doesn't exist in Australia. And so it's not just on the technology side, but just understanding the various facets of this industry, exciting industry that we're in, is not going to look the same depending on where you're standing and looking through the window.
What does INTERGEO stand for you for? So if you have to describe it, or in the view of WGIC in 3 words, 3 buzzwords.
3+ I think is fair. I think first and foremost it's opportunity and community. Being the largest event of its kind anywhere in the world currently, I think there's a real opportunity here to see from all areas of the world what's going on, to find those 2 or 3 good ideas and to take those back with you and do something about it. And so ideas are great, but that engagement, that implementation, sometimes we use fancy words like operationalization, but really doing something meaningful with it once you get back home and start back to work.
Thank you very much. Aaron Addison here in INTERGEO TV. Enjoy the show. Thank you very much.